All right. Hi, welcome to the July 31st, 2020 Club Cubase Google Hangout. I'm going to do a quick audio test and we'll get started in a few minutes. Okay, so my name is Greg Undo. I'll be the host of the Hangout today. I'm presenting from outside Washington, D.C. in the United States in Alexandria, Virginia. I work as a product specialist for Yamaha Corporation of America, focusing on Steinberg products. How the Hangout works, if you haven't been on one before, is we could ask questions in the live chat field or send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. I'm going to turn my phone down. Sorry about that. So if you want to announce, do a quick introduction in the chat field of who you are and tell us where you're from. If for those of us that are watching live, if you're watching this on the replay, you can feel free to introduce yourself. You don't have to introduce yourself, but feel free to introduce yourself in the comments. Tell us where you're from. And if you want to start asking questions in the chat field, we could do that. You could do that, and we're gonna wait to get some people logged in. So we'll probably get started at about 10 minutes after the hour. So if you're watching this rebroadcast, you may want to go ahead and skip ahead. If we, as people ask questions, we'll try to go through the questions and answer them as completely and succinctly as possible. If we see the same question over and over again, it kind of just slows the whole process down. So if we could try to not ask the same questions repeatedly in the chat field, that'd be appreciated. Sometimes particular features may be dependent upon which version of Cubase you have. So if you say, if you have a question, you may want to specify that you have, does Cubase AI version have this, or is this only, I have Cubase Pro? That could save some time as well. We'll try to have the index for the Hangout of all the topics covered done either late tonight or early tomorrow morning. So sometimes it takes a while to get the index done, but that way we could navigate to specific topics. So let's go ahead and see who is on the Hangout, and we'll get started here in just a couple minutes. Okay, so we have some questions on automation. All right, so we see some questions from Ace. All right, so we have Portland, Oregon checking in. We have Agent K on. All right, so Ace has moved to Antarctica, so we can have all 6 continents represented. Appreciate that. Okay, seeing some question on normalizing. All right, so we have a question from Millard. Welcome everyone. A happy July 31st. It's probably a holiday somewhere. Okay, so we have Sir Robert from Atlanta. We have Pinder. Okay, let's see who else is getting logged in. All right, so we have John from Kenosha, Ted from Sherman Oaks, Taylor from Pine Grove, Pennsylvania. All right, we have Gareth from the Basque Country. Okay, we have Matt from Fort Wayne, from Paraguay. Okay, so seeing some questions on Very Audio. We have New Jersey. Okay, so we see a question about slipping audio. All right, so we have India, Netherlands. Some more people from India. All right, so we have Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We have Jim from Pennsylvania. We have our Pennsylvania contingent. Okay, wait just about 2 or 3 more minutes, get some people logged in. All right, so we have Ventura, California. I have a lot of friends that live there. Beautiful town. We have Scotland. All right, so we have Croatia. All right, Bulgaria, London. People from all over the world. All right, so we have Temecula, California. It's a beautiful area. Haven't been there in a long time. All right, so and someone else saying Ventura is beautiful. My good friend John Devins lives there. He's the United States distributor for Audient and Austrian Audio. So love Ventura. Going to see my friend John. Okay, another minute or two, letting people get logged in. All right, so we have Jason from South Shield, England. Emu from India. Okay, maybe another 30 seconds to a minute. We'll get started about 10 minutes after the hour. All right, so seeing some more questions coming in. Looks like we have a lot of great topics to cover. And if you want to send topics in advance, you could send them to, again, Club Cubase at steinberg.de. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Let me just go. I have a couple different chat fields that will be going on. So at some point, my chat field will time out and I'll try to catch up. So let's go ahead and get started. So hi, Greg. Thanks a mil for this. It's priceless. I'm glad it's been helpful. Probably it's a highly repeated question, but is there a way to change the order in the stack of virtual instruments F11? So if we have some different VST instruments, So say we have backbone, and I'll go ahead and load up a couple of other ones here. Say retrolog. So when we do this, a lot of times when we have our VST instruments, these are, there isn't a way to necessarily drag and drop the order, but you may not need to, because, as soon as we have those particular instruments here, you could just kind of change the order here. And these MIDI tracks could be routed to any particular instrument. So there isn't a way, or I'm not sure if it's so absolutely necessary to, see to change the order of these. And you can make them much thinner if you needed to. But there isn't a way to kind of drag and drop to change the order, but you could just, have the order reflected here in the tracks, which is probably more important. Okay, question. At the automation section, is it possible to move the square point left and right without it going up and down? Sometimes I want to move it left or right, but I always go a little bit up and down. So let's take a look. See if we could remedy this. So I think I have some automation data here that I've written. So there's some certain functions that you could do, like a constrain direction. So if I wanted to move this element up or down, if I wanted to change like the amplitude of this automation, I could move it. And if I move it upward first, I could hold down my Alt or Option or Command or Control. So Alt Control or Option Command. And now I can't move it earlier or later in time. I could only move it up because I first moved the value upward. Now, if I first move a value in time, let's say left to right, so I'm going to select the event, hold down my Alt or Option plus Command Control. Now I can't move, I cannot move it higher or lower, but I could only move it in time. So this way we could kind of constrain the direction. So it's Alt Option Command Control, and whatever direction you first move it, hold the mouse button down as you move it and hold those two keys, and then that will constrain the direction. And this works for other events and parts as well. So as soon as I come here, I move it in time. Now I can't move it up or down accidentally. So just Alt or Option plus Control or Command and move it in that direction, and that will constrain the movement of the value. Now it works for parts on the project window as well as parts directly in automation or just about any events. Okay. Hi, Greg. Hope you and your family are doing well. We are. Thank you for asking. What is the correct method on Cubase 10.5 to sample dobro and to map notes out across the keyboard? Where and how I save my sample patches to PC? So if you have Halion, if you have just a single instrument, so if I come here, if you have just a single sound or an audio file on your project window, we could go directly to the sampler control, and you could drag the sample right in and be able to trigger it just directly there. But if you're doing kind of a multi-sample, probably the best tool, you could use Groove Agent to do it as well, and you could have 128 samples with 32 velocity layers. But probably if you're doing more acoustic instruments, you may want to consider just having a instance of Halion. So if we just kind of pop over here, we'll just add our one instance of Halion. And the cool thing with Halion is it's an actual sampler that you can sample into, Dare to Dream. So once you kind of come directly over here, you could have different kind of preset configurations. So if you wanted to just say, I wanted to look at this, you could just say mapping plus sample, and this will just kind of load you directly in. You could take your audio file here. You want to just activate like a sidechain input, and you could choose your source. So say you want audio 1, and now you could just at this point come directly into this window and sample directly in and map it to different keys. And all of your samples you'll see in your program tree here. So you could have multiple samples. You could set up different layers for articulations. And then once you're done, you could right click here and just simply, export. We don't really have any samples, but you could choose to, just right click here and choose to export the sound. So if you wanted to export as a VST3, you could do it with all the different samples as well. So that's probably the best way if you want to do kind of like an acoustic instrument, something like a dobro, to approach it in Hallian. And then you could just simply set up this audio track, and that would feed, the audio input would be fed directly into the sampler via kind of a sidechain input. Okay, just reading a comment. Thank you so much for the invaluable work that you do. I'm a longtime composer, but new to this digital world. I'm finding out that I have a lot of learning to do to be a professional composer once again. The hard part is actually, being a composer. So anyone can kind of learn the mechanics of the tools. So we have a question: how can I normalize the volume of a dynamic but mellow piano master mix to an integrated -14 LUFS? Right now it's at -19.7. So if we have an audio file selected here, what you could do is go to your audio menu to processes, and you'll see normalize. And within version 10.5, this is one of the things. You could change the loudness here to -14 LUFS, and you could just set a dynamics value there. So if you see that your file, so if I wanted this to be, let's say -20, we would see that would automatically update. But now you could just say, I want it to be -14, and that would automatically normalize the audio file that is selected to -14 LUFS. So you could just take that and do the process, and that will be applied to the file. So once again, go to the audio menu to processes and choose normalize. And you have the options of working in values in dB or in loudness units, and just type in -14. And if auto apply is checked here, that will automatically just process the file to be -14 LUFS for you. Okay, hi Greg, I import a WAV file of a piano or a MIDI piano file. How can I convert it to view what chords are played? So we can't do it for a WAV file, but if we have a MIDI file, all you'd have to do is, I'll just import one here quickly. I'll just have a track. And let's say I'll just have my piano part. I will import that. So I have this in my track. So if I wanted to extract the chords from that, I'm going to select the MIDI information, go to your project. And even if I don't have a chord track in here, I'll go to my project and we'll select chord track, and we'll say create chords from create chord symbols rather. I usually leave the top two checked and just hit OK. And it's now created a chord track for us based upon the MIDI track that we selected. So if we wanted to move this down, so that way you can see the chords that are in the particular project. Okay, question from Pinder. Question 1 of 2. Been getting dropouts, but I think it's due to writing on a mechanical HDD connected to a USB 3 hub, and my audio interface is connected to the same hub. was never a problem using VST instruments. So a lot of times, sharing your audio interface and maybe a mechanical HDD is probably not the best solution, because there's only so much power on a USB bus, even if it is powered. So like a mechanical drive is going to take a lot more power on the USB bus. So that could be causing not only just kind of power issues, but kind of a data bottleneck. Especially if you're passing a lot of audio, you could try connecting it directly to if you have the option of connecting it directly to a USB port, or, putting the audio interface, which is also transmitting probably a lot of data, and putting the drive on a different USB connection port, that would be helpful too. All right. So let's go ahead and move on. Okay, it says it was never a problem using VST instruments until I started recording audio with guitar rig instances. My laptop, i7, 40 gig of RAM, only has 2 USB slots and 1 USB-C, so I decided to buy a larger external SSD to record audio, so that would probably help with your issues. To record audio on and to connect the audio interface directly. Hope that sorts your issues out. I believe that will, so that will definitely kind of allocate bandwidth appropriately. Okay. So, question from Taylor: how do we access the plugin latency monitor in 10.5? So, if we have plugins that are kind of we could do this in the main mix console. So I'll just hit F3, and I will just go ahead and throw a couple of plugins in that I know cause latency. So I'll come here to, let's say, a multi-band compressor. So once we have plugins instantiated, I can now go, if we go to the upper right-hand corner, and I believe it's the second icon from the upper right-hand corner, we'll see this little setup. We want to make sure that channel latency is checked, and this will show up directly above your fader. As we click here, we can see the channel latency for the particular channels, and we could see exactly which inserts are causing, different delays, and, so we could just see the different delay and latency indications right there. So go to the upper right-hand corner, the second icon directly from the end, which is going to be your Windows layout. Make sure that the channel latency is active, and then you should see it directly there. So question, is there a way to get more colors from the color palette? So you may start off with a color palette, and I'm just going to hit Alt or Option Shift. I think it's S, or I'll do C, Alt, Option, plus Shift, plus the letter C. So you could come directly over here, and you'll see kind of different color options. So if we also let's go to the project color setup. So once we're here, we could also just look at new color sets. So once you go to, and this is under Alt plus Shift, Alt Option plus Shift plus S, you could click on presets, and you may see that it's going to be, I think it defaults to 16 presets. So 16 basic colors. So if you say I want 32 basic colors and I want 4 rows, you can now have up to, let's see, 8 times 32, so 256 colors that you could deal with just like that. So you could, once again, go to your project color setup and go to presets and pick how many that you want to work with color-wise. And then when you go to your color palette, you can just choose your colors there. So it's easy to get more colors. Okay, another question. Also, got 2 copies of Cubase. After upgrade, is it safe to uninstall the old Cubase 10? Yeah, you're free to uninstall that. Usually, the actual Cubase version doesn't take that much space. What can take space is all the content that comes with Cubase. But you're free to uninstall. Your license for Cubase 10.5 will work for previous generations of versions. So at that point, you shouldn't have any problem running earlier versions. If you need to, you could just reinstall it. Okay, let me just go to another project here. Okay, so I see Very Audio has a MIDI input function. What does that do? All right, so let me just get an audio file. Okay, so if we wanted to just have MIDI input, now I could select a pitch. So we will go ahead and now I could listen to. So now when I hit my MIDI keyboard, I could just select the pitch. Just when that MIDI input's on, just play your MIDI keyboard. And then you could determine the pitch of the selected segment by pressing the MIDI keyboard just that easily. Okay. Okay, why does the cloner cause timing issues when in bypass? Is there a way to prevent this so I can automate the bypass? So the cloner is a plugin that will take a decent amount of latency. Let's just check it out of curiosity. So I'll come over here. Let's put as an insert. So I'll come over here. Let's just see how much latency that the cloner. Oh, sorry, wrong plugin. So when we do this, it's going to be about 120 some milliseconds. So, you may want to just simply draw the bypass in. And also, just out of curiosity, you may want to try, the constrained delay compensation and see if that makes a difference and makes it a little more amenable for writing the automation and then taking that off. Okay. Question: how do I get the ruler track in 10.5 to display in seconds instead of bars and beats like I can by clicking in the left corner of the track name in 9.5? That feature seems to be missing. So let's go ahead. So I have bars and beats here. I'm going to add a ruler track so we can see different time formats and time displays within the project. So let's add a ruler track here. And then all you have to do is just in the track area, we could choose seconds, empty time code, samples, bars and beats. So if you just kind of click directly on the track control settings, like the track area here, you could change what time format is being displayed. All right, so Kerwin Young from Atlanta, good to see you on Hangout. All right, we have Sweden also. All right, so I have Jan from Stockholm checking in. Good to see you on Hangout. All right, so we have Russia, Seattle, Arcadia, California. Okay, question number one. Could you demo the various audio event slip and move options, i.e. slipping audio inside an event or part? So, one of the things that helps with this is to make sure that you have like an audio event that, has, data after it or before. But if we wanted to just make this just a little easier to see. So say if I have this selected and I'm just going to hold down Alt, Option plus Control or Command. So Alt, Option and Control, Command. And now we could just with the mouse just adjust. And so if something was a little bit late here or there, we could slip the audio within the event itself. So, and I think that there's so that's the easiest way, just to kind of come over here, like this, I remember working with Phil Ramone once, and he's like, yeah, my timpani player came in late. It's like, can you believe that a timpani player missed a downbeat? What can I do? I was like, oh, just slip the audio just kind of like that. And, so it's very easy just to, get timing of different elements correctly. Okay, so a question from Tommy. Is there a way to remove the locator bars from being visible when not in use? So let's say if I just come here, and I guess it's these locator bars here. So this is, and maybe if I'm misunderstanding, but like where you have the left and right locators here. So as we move that around, I think these will always be displayed. Let me see if I don't think that there's a way to... Yeah, I don't know of a way to hide those, but maybe if you're talking about other locators, generally I've never found them so intrusive and in the way. But maybe if I'm misunderstanding, just let me know, Tommy. All right, so we have Norway. We have more people from Austria. Question number 2. Actually, I'm begging, can Steinberg be persuaded to put Backbone on sale soon? It's still a fairly new product, and it's, I think for what it is, for different, for different, task that it does for sound design and drum resynthesis, it's pretty amazing. So if it was coming on sale like August 1st tomorrow or something like that, I may kind of drop a hint, but I don't really see that. Okay, so we got a question in Dorco 3.5 SE. Can I not use other instrument than Halion Sonic SE? Let me see if I could get Dorco going here really quickly. I want to see. I may have to hold down. I'm not sure which modifier key it is. I'll just take a look at elements. I think this will kind of work the same way. I believe you can use any of your VST 3.5, or any of your VST 3. But I think what you need to do is just go into play mode. And let me just go to setup. But it looks like, you could see, any of the instruments here you could set up. So I could even send it to Backbone. So I believe that the SE version would work the same way. I don't think it's going to be limited to but you may have to set it up in the play, and then just kind of, once you have a track loaded, just route it to anywhere. So give that a try, and I think that will do the trick for you. Okay, so we have Hans checking in from Netherlands. All right. So David's asking how I am. I'm doing great, thanks. Thanks for joining the Hangout. Okay, so question, when will Steinberg fix incorrectly closing projects with plugins from Acoustica Audio? Thank you. So a lot of times when, we have Steinberg, when Cubase freezes on close, it's not necessarily a Steinberg problem. So you may, it's probably good to check with Acoustica Audio on that, but and you notice that in 10.52 that if it's kind of freezing, you may get like a selective startup menu, and it'll indicate this plugin was freezing or this plugin caused the problem. So a lot of times, when certain projects don't close or incorrectly close, it's not up to us to make it work for Acoustica Audio. So you may want to check with them. I know it sounds kind of like a tech support punt, but it's really not. So you may want to bring up the issue with them, see if they have a hangout where you could ask them. But I tend not to have any problems with I don't use Acoustica Audio plugins personally, but I've gotten a question from a couple of people on Hangouts. Okay, question, is there a way to perform free warp on multiple files? Currently not. So if I come here and I wanted to duplicate the tracks, some people will try to come in here. Let's say we go to our sample editor. This would be at this point where we could just do kind of that's not going to necessarily carry over from one part to the other part. So let me just unlink these. So, and I know that could be kind of a bummer, but if you kind of, edit the different parts against each other, you could kind of see often visually as you do edits on one, how that could be applied to the other. But currently it's warping one single part at a time. So, and the feature request has been sent in a lot for that functionality to come. Hi, Greg. What Hallian or Steinberg sounds do you recommend for a sci-fi documentary? Any Hans Zimmer libraries or patches? A lot of people, there's no specific Hans Zimmer patches. He does a pretty extensive job of creating, new sounds per project that are kind of fresh and unique. let me just revert this project quickly. The one instrument that I would probably check out for a lot of sci-fi stuff would be Pad Shop. So let's say if we add an instrument track, really, if we're doing kind of that type of film scoring stuff, Pad Shop is kind of a pretty phenomenal tool. It's kind of the, play one sound and you could have kind of a whole, soundtrack. We'll just kind of go through a couple. I'll just play one voice here, where you get these sounds that evolve over long periods of time. That have motion, and let's go ahead and just this is all just hitting one single note on your MIDI controller. This is all one single note I'm holding down. So for sci-fi, that would be like the first plugin, and I would just kind of live in Pad Shop for a project like that. Question: If you were to buy one dedicated external effects hardware to take the heat of the CPU and the Cubase mastering chain, what would it be? So in the mastering chain, if I had to have a piece of hardware, what a lot of people would do is, I know a lot of people hardware-wise like the distressor. If I was for an effects processor, if I had unlimited money, I would maybe get a lot of people really like the Bricasti. When I was into kind of hardware effects, I was kind of a lexicon guy. So I think sometimes even cheap lexicons still sound great. There's a lot of power still in old LXP1 and LXP5s. So I would take, different hardware reverbs if, and sometimes those are being sold really inexpensively. Even some of the older Yamaha reverbs are really, pretty wonderful as well. So, okay, so let's just go on. Okay, so Gareth is sharing a tip I will show everyone. Says, also only found out today about Shift for replacing all audio events with a new sample. So if you don't know this trick, so we'll let Gareth kind of share this idea. So this is a great one, especially if you have a bunch of kick drums in a project that you wanted to quickly replace. So say if I have a bunch of kick drums that are set up here, and I wanted to quickly replace these, so I will just put this into a loop. I will just go to my loops and samples here, and we could now just kind of search. So if I hold down my shift key and drag it over one sample, we'll get this little prompt. Do you want to replace all samples that refer to that event? And you say yes. Now you can and just drag a sample over, hold down the shift key, hit all. Hold down the shift key. So those are some different things that you could do very easily. Just kind of, so just drag over the sample of the kick, hold down the shift key, and replace it just like that. Okay, so a comment from Ted. Has Sir Hans dubbed you an honorary member of Team Zimmer, or is it just an understood without saying so? I don't think, I wouldn't consider myself on Team Zimmer by any regards, but I'm glad to help out when they call or have questions. And we usually try to get together like once a year and have like a little master class. But with the COVID situation, I haven't been able to travel to Los Angeles, and it seems like he's been very busy on projects. But it's an honor just to, you know, it's always a thrill just to go to his studios. It's like the coolest room in the world. Okay, so it says, hi, when I record MIDI drums by routing to group channels and then to audio channels, the icons in the new recordings are grayed out. And when I disable a MIDI track or re-enable it, it will not play back. So let's give it a shot here. So we'll just set up a Groove Agent to record audio. So I'll just load up a quick kit. Okay, so let's say I'll just connect this to my transport. So right now we have one stereo out. So what I want to do, let me just slow the tempo down just slightly here. Okay, so I'm going to go to the mixer and I'm going to say kick is going out of output 2, snare out of output 3. Let's make our hi-hat output 4, our overheads output 5, and the room mics output 6. So now as we play, we'll have these being bussed. And what I want to do now is we'll just take, those particular outputs here. And just check my connections here quickly. Okay, so I'll just get to my full screen mixer, and I want to add a number of groups. So I will come here and I'll just do it from the main project window here. So I'll just do it from here. So we'll say we'll add group to selected channels, and I could make it into mono group or stereo. Okay, so now as we've done this, we'll have our tracks set up here. So our buses are now going to group. So this will be just my kick. And what I want to do now is we'll just add 5 audio tracks. And I'll just choose my groups as inputs. For these tracks. And we could make these groups mono as well. So I'm going to place these tracks into record enable. And as I play back, we just recorded those directly to the tracks. And when we do this, it doesn't... So you're saying that the audio channels, the icons in the new recordings are grayed out. When I disable a MIDI track, re-enable it, it will not play back. So let's go ahead and I will just solo these particular tracks. Let me just take them. All right. So that's kind of playing back without this. So that's just, rendered as audio information on a particular tracks. So it shouldn't have any effect. So I'm not sure if maybe you're doing a render in place where maybe you have the files, that were rendered in place might be bypassed as a choice, but, just doing kind of a straight recording doesn't affect the sound. So make sure that you have the routing right. If you follow that, I think you'll be in good shape how we just did it. Question, see my chat field just jumped. Bear with me a second. I'll just try to scroll back. Okay, how do you create that radio quality EQ filter thing that you hear on many metal intros before the full sonic guitar drop on the ears? So I'm not sure if it's what filter it is, but if it's kind of like I may have an idea. Let me just try something here. So I think this project might work. So I'll just come here to my master effect here. So we'll just kind of run this all. So I'm not sure if it's just something like that that's being automated. I know you're looking good. Maybe it's... I'm in the neighborhood. I got some cheap wine. Let's have a good time. I never promised you. I know a lot of people do kind of frequency cutting on intros, and then when it kind of kicks in, that they'll just have that off so it has more impact. So it could be just the simple filter on a guitar tracks or on a master bus. So I'm not sure if that's exactly the type of effect you're going for, but that's something I hear a lot, but I don't follow all the metal recordings like I used to when I was younger. So okay, so let's see. I did a folder with drum tracks, but bass drum won't play. Terrence from London So let's say if I have, all of my tracks here. So I have all my tracks in a folder here for the drums. And let me just go ahead and take off my filter here.
But if you're missing me, let it be. Hit the road, gonna rock, gonna roll. I got no control. Hit the road, gonna rock, gonna roll, and I'm going. We got one night, we're gonna get it right. We're gonna crank it up and maybe start a
So when I go to like my drums folder here, So if you're not hearing the drums, I mean, putting it into a folder, putting tracks into a folder don't have any effect on the audio playback. It's really just using, all it's doing is organizing on the project. So it shouldn't have any effect at all on the audio signal, audio routing, or anything like that. So I would check, if it's just putting it in a folder and you're not hearing the drums, there's something else that's going on, but the folder shouldn't, and I've never seen it, mute or not play tracks because they're in a folder. Okay. So question on offline processing, how to using reverb and delay, how to do the tail longer and how long should I make it and so on. Can you show some example? So let's say if I wanted to, I think I have some like gang background vocals, or let's do a guitar solo here. So let's say, I just want to put a delay on the particular guitar part here. So often what I do is I'll just kind of select with the range tool. And a lot of times I just kind of drag it out like that. Go to, let's say I want to do a delay on this particular one. So I'll go to my direct offline processing and let's say a mono delay. And I wanted to make it a quarter note delay. And when you come here, we could extend the process range in milliseconds or the tail in milliseconds. So now as we listen to it, we should hear. So you could just, once you have those particular settings done here, so you could just select. So let's say I just want just this very end part here. So let's just listen to it, just a separate file here, just at the very end of the solo. So let's say I want that to delay a bunch. So I will, and you have to kind of play with the millisecond value here. So again, a mono delay, let's make it eighth note delay. So now we take just that one little part there. So let's make it maybe half note delay. So you could extend kind of your time out here and just do that. But that's why you have kind of the, you could extend the processing range or extend the tail directly there. And if you don't like what you did, you'll see that as I delete this offline process, that will get shorter in size just to accommodate that. So, all right. Okay, so version 10, stupid question. Is there a way to tell whether a group track is stereo or mono? So let's just go ahead and add some here. And I don't think there's any changes between 10, and I'll just call this mono group so I don't have to guess later. Okay. So when you see the little icons here, you'll see that the stereo group has two little circles, and the mono group just has a single circle. So this is how you could tell if it is stereo mono. So just look, and I think so you could see that in like the lower console. So that's how you could do it in the mixer view. Let's see if it's indicated. If you have the fader here, let's see if there's an indication. So in the mixer, just look for this little icon indicating stereo or mono. Okay, so I just see a comment from Pablo. Greg, thanks for the solution to my question the other day. I tried it and it's wonderful, although it should be implemented in the export menu. So I don't remember which one it was. I think we did about 100 questions in the last Hangout, Pablo. So sorry for forgetting. Okay. So question, how can I make a macro that opens up a certain insert on the master bus? I don't know of a macro to do that, but I do know you could do it through a generic remote editor. So if you have a MIDI controller set up, you could come here. So let's say I have, let's just say Magneto plugin here. And I want to open this up easily. So we could set up a generic remote. So if you have a MIDI controller or drum pad or something like that, you could use that as a control surface. So I will just get rid of this generic remote. We'll start from scratch. So I'll click on plus and let's hit generic remote. And I want to do just a note on message. So I'm going to just click on the learn button and hit a button on my MIDI controller. So as I do this, we'll see that this incoming MIDI message, and what we want this to do is go to mixer. Let's say our stereo out. And let's go to insert 7 Magneto and select edit. So now if I've done this correctly, I could just hit that key in my computer keyboard and that plugin for that particular channel will just kind of pop open. So it's not a macro. You know, you could use a foot switch, but any MIDI message, you could just hold down. So I know people that have just entire keyboards that they don't do any MIDI control, but they just use it for triggering different functions with a generic remote editor, just like that. So it's not a macro, but I think that, you know, that'll get you where you want to very quickly. And I'm not sure if you could kind of do it in a macro, but that would do the trick. Okay. Another question. Is there a way to optimize the use of my 128 gigs of RAM and or 12 cores of my computer with Cubase Pro 10.5? So as you do this, you know, Cubase will scale and will use all of your memory, your 128 gigs. I'm envious. And will use all of your chords. One thing to be aware of is generally, how computers work. Like if you have a bunch of instrument plugins, for instance, or a bunch of plugins, you could think of, each plugin itself, is a process. So some people will load up, like a version of Hallian and load up 64 processes, or load up Contact and have 16 sounds in one instance of Contact. So let's say if we go to like maybe a Hallian Sonic SE, like a multi-timbral instrument. So, and how this will work is this plugin can utilize one chord, the next plugin can utilize another chord. So one plugin here can't be spread across, 12 chords. But each plugin instance can be kind of allocated to different cores of processing. So you would probably have better CPU performance and better multi-core performance by just splitting out, individual sounds to different instruments, or having more instruments with fewer sounds as opposed to fewer instruments with more sounds loaded, especially if you're doing more like multi-timbral type functions. So instead of having 16, instances of a sound in 16 sounds, unique independent sounds in one instance of Hallian Sonic SE, just, try to use multiple. You're better off using 16 Hallian Sonic SEs because that will split the CPU utilization more evenly across the multi-cores. Okay. Just seeing comment from Ace. Greg, I'm in Texas, but it's hot, so I'm trying to create an Antarctica feeling with the AC cranked up. So just see how better to use collaboration. Can it be better? There's a couple of ways of doing collaboration. If you're doing recording, you could come over here and do like a VST Connect SE, and this would allow you to, I don't have a webcam, but you could record people remotely into your system. So users can get the app from the App Store for an iPad or iPhone, or get a free download as the VST Connect performer and be able to record directly in here. So you could do 2 tracks like stereo for free, and if you want to do 16 tracks, you could get the VST Connect Pro, and that will allow you to do 16 tracks and MIDI stuff. So those are some great collaboration tools that people are using pretty frequently, especially in our COVID era. So if you're not using those, that will help. All right, I see Backbone. Gareth is saying he's playing with Backbone now, so. Okay, Garrison, sorry, Greg, my first message didn't get through. Just big thanks for all your help. Archie, so if you want to ask your question again, feel free to kind of ask, and we'll see if we can get it. Sometimes if you put the question in the comments field before the Hangout starts, it sometimes disappears, and sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, so. Okay. Okay, so a question from Terry. Hi, Greg. Is there a way to prevent the guidelines from disappearing when we zoom in on an audio track and disable the snap to move the track to align it to the guidelines? So I'm not sure what you mean by the guidelines. So let me see if I could get it figured out. Sorry, Terry, if I'm misunderstanding. Okay, so is there a way to prevent the guidelines from disappearing when we zoom in? So I'm not sure. So, here we could see, I'm not sure if the guidelines are kind of the reference points here. So I'm not sure. Maybe Terry, if you could just indicate if the guidelines are the timing scale here, if that's what's disappearing. Sorry, I'm probably just being a little dense. So the guidelines only seem to appear when we stop dragging the track. So let me just cut a part here and see if I could figure out what Terry's getting at. Sorry for being dense. So didn't want that, but so I'm not sure if it's the number that you see here. If that's considered a guideline, like the numeric placement of the value there. So I'm not sure if that's what's disappearing for you. You say you only see it. So maybe I'm misunderstanding, Terry, but if you could maybe reiterate your question a little bit, that'd be helpful. Sorry about that. But good to see you on a Hangout. Okay, question. What to do when the option for fade out is not there anymore at the WAV file? I had a situation yesterday after recording an artist. It could be that, a lot of times if you're here and let's say you don't have a fade in option available, it could be that, you have audios that are events or parts. So you may, it may be set as a part. And if it's set to a part, you don't have fade in handles. And when you double click, you go into the part editor as opposed to the sample editor. So try selecting the event, go to your audio menu and choose dissolve part. And as you go to dissolve part, then you'll see your fade handles. And when you double click, it will go into the sample editor. So you probably just need to go to audio and choose to dissolve part. Okay, question. Let me just make sure I didn't miss a question. Thanks for all the great questions. If you've learned a new tip or trick, and make sure you hit the like button. If you haven't if you aren't subscribed to the channel, make sure that you actually subscribe to the channel as well. Okay, I want to record different guitar riff ideas with different tempos as I come up with ideas on one project. What is the best workflow to achieve this regarding tempo changes? So if we have, so let's say I come here and my audio, I set the tempo to 100 beats a minute. I'll just do this with a new project to be cleaner to see. All right, and let's say you're collecting guitar riffs. Or as like composers would say, I'm developing themes, So we come here. And I want to, let me just kill some of my unnecessary inputs here. Okay, so my tempo is, let's say, 88 beats a minute. So let's say I record. Okay, I change my tempo to 96. I hit record. All right, and I do another riff. So I want this to be 108. And let's say one more at 120 beats a minute. Okay, so now I recorded 4 different riffs at 4 different tempos. When we go to look at the files in the audio pool, we can see that the tempo stamp is going to be different. So we have, I probably hit, so we have 88, 360. I must have typed in the wrong value, 108. So we have different tempos here for each of these recordings. So let's say I'll set this to 120, and we'll do one more recording here. So it's going to take the tempo stamp that you have in the recording. So we'll go to our pool window one more time. So we can see our different tempos. So once we have, and if we wanted these all to fit at a common tempo of, let's say, 144, all you'd have to do is to select these files, these, collections of riffs, place them into musical mode, and then they will automatically follow the tempo that you've done. So at this point, each of those riffs would now fit into the musical tempo. So as you record, the tempo information is going to be applied to the particular file. So let me just say 144. So, and as you come over here, place them into musical mode, then it will kind of snap and all be kind of tempo parasites, if you will. Okay, just reading through comments. So I just see a question: record vocal with compressor or without. I would try to, if you have a vocalist who's, very dynamic or very soft and then loud and then shouting and screaming and whispering, and it's very, very inconsistent, and you're worried about, you're worried about, peaking or clipping the audio signal, I may record with a compressor. But generally, I personally try not to record vocals with compression, just because, one analogy I heard that was pretty good is you can't unburn the steak. So once it's kind of in there, it can be, very hard, and, there's some tools that are maybe getting there. But you can't uncompress it afterwards. So for flexibility, I would try to record without compression. And if you need to apply compression to make it fit into the mix, you could always do it after the recording. Okay. So how can I change to a song's chord progression of a few mono audio files using chord track? I think I asked a question in the last Hangout, but only MIDI was shown. So yeah, we could do it for audio as well. Let me cough really quick. All right. Sorry about that. So let's take a look. I think I've, let's just go here to this project, and I have like some drums and bass, and I have some guitar, which I'll mute. So let's say if I'm here, so I'll add a chord track. So what I want to do to the audio itself, and I think we showed this in the last Hangout, maybe the previous one, is I'm going to go to the very audio and just have it do its analysis so it knows what pitch the audio is. So once that's been done, so I'm going to add a chord track here. already in here. Let me just, okay, so I have my chord track, and I'm just going to just type in a couple of chord changes here. Okay, so let's say I want this to be G, an E chord, let's say B, and we'll go back to G. All right, so what I want to do is to now select this track, go to the chord tab inspector, and we'll say follow the chords and scales. So at this point, I will just play back. And then that's really kind of all you had to do is to have, those particular tracks follow the chords. Is once you have that set up, just choose to follow the chords, and your vocals can automatically follow, as well as monophonic, like not poly, as opposed to polyphonic, will just kind of follow. Okay, so we had a question, I think dealing with MIDI and muted notes. So let me do some wonderful 21st century composition here. All right, and let's say if I have, so the question is, how can you select muted MIDI notes and invert selection to non-muted MIDI notes? So if we have MIDI notes that are muted here, so let's say I have these, we could just come here and you could group select and invert the selection. We could probably do a logical, let's say if I have, different notes that are muted and not muted here, let's see if we could do a logical editor preset for this. So we'll go to, all right, under MIDI menu to logical editor. So let's say type is equal to note, and property is set to event is muted. We want to okay, so this will, let's say we want to, let's see if we could just, I'm sure there's a way of doing it, but I'll probably just have a brain cramp. Let's see if there might even be a preset for this. Let's just see if we could do maybe value 1. We could probably do it as a macro and invert. I don't think that's going to do it, but so we could have it to select all. Okay, let me just get rid of this. So let's say if I want to select and then if I just come here to select and maybe invert, you could do that, but and then I think you could also just, if you select all, so let's say I want to select all notes that are muted, and then I think you could just hit, let me just find I think there's a keyboard shortcut even for this. So now that we have that done, you could just hit so I'll just try this real quick. So select all the notes. So you could just do Alt M as a keyboard shortcut. So if anything is muted, you could select all of these and you could trigger a macro that's this logical editor preset, and then Alt M to undo that. So okay, let's go through some more questions. Thanks for all the great questions. Just see a comment from Pablo. New news from Steinberg, Greg, about VST3. I haven't heard of any news, but so I'm not sure if there's any news on VST3 specifically. Okay, just reading through comments. Get a quick cough. All right. Okay, so just saying comment from Sir Robert Robertson, more colors. Ooh, more crayons in like the crayon box. Yeah. Hello, Greg, and thanks again. Can you explain why the MIDI loop would amount in the chord pad pattern always play with a different design? Can't we immediately import them into originals. So I think we talked about this last time, but let's take another look at it. So let's say if we have different MIDI loops, let me just find maybe like a keyboard part or something. All right, so say I just drag that in and I want to go to the chord pads. And even though we just did this last week, I'll probably forget. So I will drag this particular pattern here to the MIDI part, and now we go to our chord pads. So again, the question is, can you explain why the MIDI loop, what amount in the chord pattern always plays with a different design? Can't we immediately import them into the originals? So, once you have it in the chord patterns here, it's intended to, just kind of play that particular pattern based on the chord. So I know you can't drag it directly onto the chord pad. But let's see if I could just drag it right to the pattern. So all right, so that's kind of the intention of that. So let me just close this out. All right, so let's move on. Okay, question. Hi, Greg. Is it possible to transfer the entire contents from one template over to another working template? What I would do is, as you start with your template, I would save your template as a project. So just call it, template.cpr or whatever. Go to import and choose tracks from project. So I will come here. Let me activate this particular project. All right. Here, bear with me a second. Okay, so once we have that done, what we want to do is just choose to import tracks from project. So we've saved your template as just a CPR file. Then go to your file menu, import tracks from project. And then you could choose to select all. You could, if you had events in your template, you could carry those over or not, or you could include or exclude automation. And that way you could bring back all those tracks directly into your template, your project. Okay, so we have a question: how do I slow down several tracks without them getting off synced? Okay, so let's say if I want to do this for audio, and MIDI does it quite easily, but let's just come here. So first of all, you want to make sure that all of the tracks are, have a tempo stamp. So when I come here, I could play back a project. And if we go to our pool window and look under media, we could open up our pool window. You want to make sure that all these are assigned to like the correct tempo, like we were discussing earlier. Make sure that they're all in musical mode. So now as I come here, I could type in whatever tempo I want. So if I want it to be 88 beats a minute or 128. 96. But once I do this also, I could add a tempo track. So if I wanted to just come right over here, let's add a tempo track. We could activate said tempo track. And as I want to just kind of, come here, we could ramp up a bit. And let's just say I want to ramp slowly down to here. So as we play, so we'll see a tempo bump from 120 to 135. Then we're going to have it retard down. And if I wanted to just adjust that even slower. And you can just see the tempo and the transport bar here going crazy. And then if you wanted to just jump back. And that's really all you had to do to make those to slow several tracks down. So okay, so let's go ahead and I'm just going through comments. Thanks for all the great comments and questions. Okay. Seeing lots of discussion on emergency telephone numbers for different European countries. Okay, so question, comment from Mark Rabin. I would love to see how to take a finished song. I export left and right mix already, and how to remove all data, leaving all channels set with configure, and create a template without the data, please. So let's say I have this project here. This is called Amos Moses. So I want to do a new project, and like as a template, I'll say, it's very easy. And this is in 10.5. We'll say, let's import tracks from project. I'll select Amos Moses. Okay. And then I just uncheck events and parts and automation. I'll choose select all. And now I just do that. All my tracks are there. Let me just do a new project rather. Sorry, I imported it into the same project. So again, import tracks from project. Select this, uncheck events and parts, uncheck automation, select all. And now everything that you had set up in your track is there without any of the data. So hopefully that'll make sense, Mark, for you. So question, why is the UI still so pixely compared to other DAWs? For example, the pixelness of a WAV file, will there be an update on that? There are a couple of things, Cubase is running full high DPI. So it's, but let's say I'll just close this and, when you come here, there are a couple of preferences for, the WAV file. So let's say if we get into here, we could go to preferences and we go to, I think under event display for audio, you'll see some, you could have waveform brightness. You could also have the waveform outline intensity. So let's say if I didn't want to have that all the way up or up, I could have my waveform brightness. So, Cubase is running at, full DPI. It could also be depending on if you're on Windows, sometimes running, different DPI scaling can make a big difference. But, I think it's pretty sharp graphically to work with. But there are a number of different appearance settings that you could do as well. Okay, just reading through different comments. Okay, so just seeing more comments on, I think Gareth may be waiting for Black Friday for Backbone. And then I see, but I saw Ian Kirkpatrick using it a lot when he was destroying his samples. Yep, Backbone's pretty amazing for that. And, use the trial version in more projects. And then probably when your trial's up, you'll buy it, I think. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Okay, so we have a question. Can I change the transport stop behavior on the fly, or do I have to change it always in the options menu? For example, stop at position or go back to start position. So if you're not familiar, you could have the, when we start the transport behavior when I come here, like I could just set it to, let me just go back to our original tempo here. So there's two different modes of working. So when I stop that, it stops where it is, or we could have a preference for under transport to return to start position on stop. So when that is active and I hit play, now when I hit stop, it's going to go right back to where it was. Now, if you want to easily toggle this behavior, what I do is just go to my key commands, and we could set up a key commands for this preference. So I will come over here. Let's go to under preferences and to transport. And then we'll say return to start position on stop. How I usually have this set up is I'm going to assign shift plus spacebar. So now when I play, I could go back, but if I hit shift plus spacebar, it'll now just stop and continue from there. Hit shift plus spacebar and it'll go back. So I don't want that. Shift plus spacebar, and stops right where I want. So again, just go to your key commands and under preferences. So I'll just transport, return to start position on stop, and that way you don't have to go back to the menu all the time. Okay, so we have Richard checking in from Montreal. Appreciates all that I do. Thank you for the comment. I hope you're finding the Hangouts helpful. Okay. Question in 10.5, how do we assign a command to iPad control via Cubase IC Pro? Let's say write an automation for a reverb send level using iPad's virtual slider assigned for this function. So I haven't played, I don't have an iPad currently with IC Pro, but I could check it out and maybe borrow one from a family member and see. But so, but I don't have a way of showing it on the Hangout as well. So, if you want to email me, I could probably at clubcubase@steinberg.de. I could probably maybe help you offline. Okay, so I'm just seeing Gareth mention freeze on close. I have the same problem. It's a GUI issue between Acoustic Audio, Cubase, and Windows Direct 3D Rasterizer. It sometimes happens with some Slate plugins as well. Hi, Greg. What is your favorite third-party plugin for mastering with Cubase? The one plugin, what I tend to do all my mastering in Wavelab. But the one plugin that I use in Wavelab, I think is like the best mastering plugin, is going to be the Master Rig. So I'll just show it here quickly. And we see some of the components of Master Rig have come out to other programs, but I will just take my mix down in Wavelab, and then you could have not only kind of your EQ, which is I believe the same as frequency. So we'll have kind of those same components that we have. So we could have a multi-band compressor. You could choose different compression types as well. Also, just a if you want to have your dynamic EQ, I really, we have a multi-band saturation where you could have, tape or tube for different frequency ranges. The one thing I love is a multi-band imager and very high quality limiters. And you could just kind of pick and choose the order of these, where you could actually, and these could work for, stereo, left, right, or mid-side. So a lot of times I may take my mix from Cubase and export it to Wavelab just to run it through that. So, probably it's worth the price of admission of Wavelab Pro just to get the Master Rig plugin. But, we see some of those components working their way into Cubase with frequency and, and some of the other plugins. Okay. Okay, just reading through comments. So we're getting to learn our European. I'm learning more of my European history of what countries have apparently, I think it's have ruled the Netherlands over the years. So, all right. Okay. Hi, Greg. Would you consider running through the functions of VST Connect Pro in a future Hangout, please? So let's see if we can, give me a second. I can see if I can get something set up here. Let me just get a project loaded up here. Okay, I'm just going to grab my bass. Hang on. Okay, so let's see if we can get this going. This is really tricky to get all going on while doing a hangout, but we'll give it a shot. Okay, so I have my audio from laptop B, which you can't see here. And so what I want to do is we're going to set this up. So you could log in, and I have this kind of just on a local connection. So if you wanted to listen to... Okay, so I'll take my talk back off. So once we kind of have this set up, so you could have a webcam so that you could talk to different people. And I'm going to just have a track playing here. And this will kind of work directly with using the control room functionality. So when I come over here, what I need to do is take this particular drum track, and right now this is what's monitoring from the recording engineer side. So you have a talkback microphone, and you set up a Q mix here in the control room. So to send the audio of the control over to the musician here, what I need to do is go to the tracks and just set up my control room here. So this is now being sent out directly to the bass, to the musician. I'm going to hit both channels, and if I have done this right, when I hit play, we'll hear kind of the sound from my source, the studio side, and the sound that's going on for the musician at the same time. So we'll hear probably like a weird delay. So I'm going to mute what the engineering side, that channel, and I'm going to now just play and listen to what the musician is hearing. So we'll just... So if I want to record, I would just set this particular track. So monitor that track. And at this point, what I want to do is I'll just... Now, as you do this, you want to make sure that the Q mix is the metronome. If you want them to hear the metronome within the Q mix, make sure that the metronome is there. A lot of times people will just send this and they don't hear the metronome. So you have to actually activate the metronome within the Q mix. So I will just go ahead and record a little bit here. So this is what it sounds like to the musician side. So now I hit stop. And if I wanted to listen, all I'd have to do is rewind. So if I want to listen to it from the engineer side, I'll hit my mute buttons again. I'll switch. And now, as we hit play, and now I'll combine in. Now this is what the musician is hearing. Now the musician may not hear themselves if they're not going through the Q mix. So again, we could select this, activate the Q mix so that their track is being sent to the musicians. So there is a delay. So the musician's track, the engineer's track is going out, and then over the internet, there will be a timing delay that's compensated for. So when we come and just listen to our different sources, this way I have this set up so I could monitor both sources together at the same time. So that's really all you need to do is, when you do this, and you could, from the engineering side, you could have a talkback microphone. So if you hit that, you could talk directly to the musician and say, hey, try that take again. You could see each other on the webcam. I have my laptop lid closed here. And that's, once you do that and set it up, and if you need to, set up so that they could hear like a courtesy reverb, you could have that set up. So, you could also have EQ, you could have different VST3 plugins. It doesn't work with the Cubase plugins, but any of your third-party plugins, and this will allow you to remotely record the different people. You could also, as you go to the setup, you could control their latency, their buffer, their camera. And then when you go to manage, we could actually just say, get the HD files. And if you have the Cubase, the VST Connect Pro, that will actually transfer the files directly from the person's computer into your system. With the VST Connect SE, the audio is never actually on their system. So it's just being transmitted as a FLAC file that will be recorded directly into your system. So that's a kind of an overview how you can work with some of the VST Connect and VST Connect Pro. So let me just put my bass down and we'll go on to next question. Thanks for all the great questions. If you learned something new, make sure that you actually give a thumbs up again. So let me just close this project and I'll put my bass down. I'll be right back. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. All right. All right, so now we're into some historical discussion of Roman aqueducts. See a comment from shift replace is a great time saver, Greg. Yeah, that's a really handy feature. So all right, we see the jazz dudes on a hangout. Glad you could join us. Okay, just going through some. All right, and we see Ambient Dave on a hangout. Sorry if I missed you earlier. So I just see a comment says, did you say the 10.5 license works with older versions? This is incorrect. Does for me. So I think it works for, I run SX1 off of my license, my 10.5 license. I just did it recently. So, okay, my chat line just jumped way ahead. Give me just find my spot again. Sorry. Okay, I may have lost some questions in the timeline. Sorry about that. Okay, just reading through. So I see question. I sometimes get ghost automation. For example, I'm automating volume on an HSSE, like how Sonic SE instrument, but Cubase Pro 10.06 writes automation for other items. Is this a known issue? A lot of times when I see that is, I'll just come over here. And let's create a new project. Okay, so we'll just load up kind of multiple. So a lot of times when I hear something like that happening is maybe the other track is record enabled without realizing it. So I would check this. So let's say if I'm here, let me just... I'm just going to check my connections real quick. Oh, sorry. All right. All right, so now, so if I'm here, just going to remove the VST Connect. I think I might still have it. Okay, so what happens a lot of times is maybe you have two tracks here, and as you record that, maybe, if one track is smaller, that it's accidentally recording on all selected tracks. So I've seen, the 2 or 3 times I've had someone describe it as ghost automation, or that the channels are linked together as another way. So if you go to the mix console here and we have these linked, so I will come here, and then if you link channels and you have volume automation, so that's kind of when I've seen different, when people have automation going somewhere else that they don't want. Okay. See question. Hi, Greg. I've heard you can play in an instrument such as a violin without touching the mod wheel for CC expression and to play the track back and add expression afterwards. So, if you have, let's say, just a quick violin part here, let me just. Okay, so let's just. So as soon as you have, let's say if I record data in, so let's say I've recorded that in, and now if I want to just draw in modulation, all you have to do now is, just select that you wanted to just draw in or record the modulation. So now as we listen to this one voice, and then that's really kind of all you'd have to do to kind of, get that set up for you. So. So question, is there a way to change the project name? Sometimes I start a project without knowing what it will end up as. So really all you have to do is just go to your file menu and save as, and that should be able to kind of save that will save the project name just that easily. So if it's something else, just kind of let me know. Okay, seeing a nice comment from Chris McGuire. Hi, Greg. Thank you for putting on these hangouts. Been following for a while, and they're great. I'm glad it's helpful. All right. So I see question, does Steinberg provide more Cubase templates that can be downloaded? A lot of times templates can be very specific. We kind of give people that are starting off. So if we do a new project where you could see, kind of people that are just kind of starting with their journey where, okay, I want a brass quartet. I want, maybe orchestral layout, some different instruments. But I think these are kind of underutilized because a lot of times templates can be very specific to what instruments you have. So it may not make a lot of sense to, to have lots of, so there aren't extra templates that are available. I know some people, share templates, but it could be very specific to what your actual setup is as well. Okay, so question, is there a way to see chords you are playing in real time? So let's go ahead and we just get out of this project. So I think sometimes within the MIDI editor that there's a chord display. You have to activate it. But you could also just kind of go within a chord pad as well. So if I just wanted to, or if you have a chord track, there's another way. Is you could just say MIDI input and then just kind of play any, I'll just randomly play notes. So you could do that as well, just in the chord track, and you could automatically have that analysis derived. Okay, so it says, Greg, is my license 10.5 killed versions 4 and 5? Did you just say that I should reinstall Cubase 5? Will my old song stay alive after while doing, or so should I wipe my hard drive? So you may have to download the latest e-licenser for your previous version. So if you go to elicenser.net, you may have to download not the late, depending, probably if you're in Cubase 4 or 5, it's going to be the current e-licenser won't be able to be run at that level of operating system. So you could just download and if you go, you could say download e-licenser, and I do this by going to elicenser.net, that you could just do that and download the previous ones and run the latest. There's kind of the latest version of the old e-licenser for older operating systems, and you could do that. But your Cubase 5 projects will just load directly up into Cubase 10.5, so you really don't have to do any importing or exporting, anything like that. So, but yeah, so I just kind of walked through it with a client in Seattle, Henta Ellis, and she went from 5 to 10.5 and was able to, she just had to get the download the right version of the e-licenser for the previous generation, and then you should and then she's able to run her Cubase 5 in her old machine, take the dongle, the e-licenser to the new machine, and use the same e-licenser back and forth. Okay, just going through some more questions. Okay, so I see Echotronic just got a UR44 thanks to his stimulus check. We've never been able to afford all this. It's great. Contribute to the economy. So another question from Gareth. Forgot to ask, complete reinstall of 10.5 possible without deleting the plugin folders? So if you if you reinstall Cubase 10.5, it won't affect your plugin folders. But it's always helpful, before doing a lot of stuff is, one thing I would always suggest, just as a safety measure, especially people going from different computers, is just coming over here and saving a profile manager so all your preferences are saved. So, but reinstalling it shouldn't affect your plugin folders. Okay. So question, can you demonstrate an example of toggling between linear and musical time base when working with film? Would I apply this to a track where one event is musical and another is linear? So let's go ahead and take a look at that. right, so I think I have a project that we could show this on. So there's two different time bases for Cubase. There's going to be a musical and linear based. So let's say if I have a particular file here. So let's say right where that cloud went, what I want to do is to just kind of come. So let's say if I want an event to like maybe a cymbal sound right at that particular event. So I'm going to add a quick instrument track and we'll add a high and sonic SE. All right, let me just see if I could. Okay, so let's say I want like that G3 note, and I'm going to come here and I'm just going to draw in. Okay, so let's say as I play this back. Okay, so I just got incredibly lucky and that kind of fit. So now we have linear and musical time base. So if I change the tempo and we look at this particular track, and we could change between linear and musical by we see this quarter note here, or we see a clock. So if I change the tempo here from let's say 117 to 90, let's say 87. Now when I play back that cymbal, it's not in time where we have that cloud coming in. So what I want to do is we're going to come back, let's say where we had that note come in with the cloud. So this track I'm going to put into linear mode. So we see a clock. So as I change the tempo, that track will always kind of play back, if I did it correctly, right where that cloud comes. Even after changing the tempo. So when it's in linear mode, the events stay at the time position as opposed to the bar and beat. So when changing tempo, if it's in linear mode, it stays exactly where it is. If it's in musical mode, the timing of that event gets changed according to the tempo changes that have been applied. So for like visual events where you're lining up, that's when you'd want to have, different elements into linear mode as opposed to musical mode. Okay, so I see Pablo kind of clarified about I think this from the last hangout about exporting mono and stereo files at the same time, and that's the thing that helped him. So thanks for reminding me. Okay. Okay, just reading through different comments here. Thanks for all the great questions. And if you've learned something new, please feel free to like the Hangout and make sure that you actually are subscribed to the channel. And we usually do these on, Tuesdays and Fridays. Okay. Just see a nice comment from Pablo. The Cubase control room is amazing. I could not live without her. It's very helpful. Once you kind of get your head around it, it's very powerful. Okay, so see a question. In editing window, after I edit some notes, I have to get out of it, then use glue tool, and then to go back to editing window in order to see the changes in the editing window. Is there a way to change it? Let me just reread it here. So in editing window, after edit some notes, I have to get out of it, then use glue tool, and then go back to editing window in order to see the changes. So I'm not sure if it's like, let's say if I have these events here, and let's say I have this copied a couple of times, and then so say edit some notes, I have to get out of it, then use a glue tool, then go back to editing. So I wonder if this is maybe like, okay, I come here and then like having to like maybe select all the parts before going into the editor. So I think if I'm not sure if I'm understanding, but maybe if you're here and then it seems like maybe you're gluing the events to, sorry, let me just, so I don't know if you're gluing the events together and so you could see as one part, or if you just want to hold down shift and double click and go into the editor, and then you could, as you select your different parts, that could be the active part there. So one thing just to try is just to shift double click if I'm understanding, and that way you could have all the events selected and then just hit like the control or command E, and that will take you into the editor and you could see all that without having to glue. So see if I'm misunderstanding, Robert, just let me know. Okay, reading through comments. So we have another question. I think we did this earlier. Is there a way to do free warp on multiple tracks at once? So currently there isn't, so it'd have to be done individually. Okay, so we have a question, how to set up a fader on my MIDI controller to control the volume of its respective MIDI channel. All right, so I'm just going to check one thing real quick, and then we'll show you this. Let me go to my... Okay. So, you could have your, let's go to a couple, I'll just do a new project. Okay, so as I want to do this, we could, let's come directly over here. Let's go to, first of all, we want to set up your quick controls. So we could go to your studio setup and you could have track quick controls and VST quick control. So here, what we could do is have, so if you wanted to have VST quick controls, we could assign and learn these functions. So if you have like 8 sliders, just click on learn. And at this point, you could select. So let's say I'll do 41, 40. Okay. And now if I wanted to control, so I could just go to my quick controls here and we could just kind of blow these out as well. So I just want to do this. And then I just want to record MIDI volume. So we could just activate it and then that's all you need to do. So I like to have the quick controls set up just for 8 sliders I have on my controller. And then you could just kind of pick and choose what functions you want. So if you want it to be volume, panning, input filter, and you could have those kind of set. So a lot of composers may want volume, modulation, expression, panning for their different controllers. And it'll just have those quick controls set up. So that's an easy way to be able to handle that for you. Okay, so just see a question in 10.5, how to make the upper window be same as the lower. The measure in the lower one is in a different place. I constantly have to look for it. So if you have, let me just add a number of audio tracks here. Just get some tracks are populated. So I'm not sure if you have the divide tracks feature active. So how to make upper window be the same as lower. So if we do this, we could kind of have this divided and you'll see this little icon here for divide track list. And now that's kind of all into one, one part just like that. So if I'm misunderstanding, let me know. Okay. So question, is there a way to make tempo edits respect snap to grid? I only ever want to change the tempo on a bar line, but it always seems to be slightly before or after. So let's take a look. So we'll have this and let's go to tempo track. So I just have snap turned on. So now I have my snap set to bar and I can't go in between. So let's say I want my tempo value there and let's say I just wanted to do a jump. So without snap, and you could turn snap on and off by hitting letter J, I could freely put tempo changes in anywhere. But with snap enabled, and again, it's letter J in your computer keyboard, and I have the grid set to bar, I can only place my tempo changes at measures, not before or after. And as I go to select, we can see that these will be directly on the bar line. So make sure that you have snap and then you have grid and your grid type set to bar. Okay, let's read through some more questions. Okay, so I think this is maybe a reiteration from Terry's question. It says, Greg, the audio track has sort of a hit point detected lines that disappear when I drag the file in a project, so I can't align them on the time indicators on the bar. So, okay, I think I understand now. So let's say I will just drop a loop in. Let me just undo some of these tempo changes. Let me just... Okay, so we see kind of the... Let me just take my snap off. Okay, so where we see kind of the tempo hit points here. So, and as we move, that you don't really, well, we could think of the hit points as being kind of, I think I understand your point, Terry. So we kind of see the grid. Let's see if there's any options in the sample editor for hit points that will... So we see kind of the hit points here. Okay, so let's say as we move, so you see that kind of as they're selected, that it's hard to align, but the most of the hit points are going to be at the visual transient as well. So, I can see you may just want to use like the visual transient in a waveform, but I think I understand now, Terry. So thanks for the clarification. Okay, just seeing a nice comment about how to maximize workflow, assign macros, label the keyboard, get multiple displays for mixer tracks, media bag, etc. Lock them, autosave, and backup daily. It's good tips. Thanks for sharing. Hi, Greg. In Cubase, if I want to quantize a region rather than hit points in the audio file, what is the best way? So we could, so let's say if I do this and let me just split. So just saying, so you want to quantize the region. So what I've seen some people do, without doing this is, selecting this and then, with the hit points, I'm just going to reread rather than hit points. So let's say if I want to quantize here to half notes. So, if you just select the region here, so let's say if I have this set to, I want that quantized half notes. I'll go to my quantize panel. I'll just go to my audio warp. And let me just select just a little bit earlier here. So make sure that audio warp is active. And then just hit quantize there. So you could kind of just save that, set your quantize value, and say, I want this to be quantized to eighth notes. then that's all you'd have to do. But make sure that when you go into your quantize settings that you just have the audio warp selected. Okay, how to convert audio to MIDI. There's a couple of different ways. One is just by transient bass. So if you're doing like drums, you could come here and go to hit points. And once you, so from the sample editor, so let's say I'm here for this particular one, we go to determine your hit points. So you can set your kind of your threshold and create MIDI notes based on that. So you could retain dynamics. So that's really handy for doing, you know, like drums. But if it's a tonal thing like a vocal, you could just use Very Audio. So this is just... I'll just jump to another project here quickly. So if I want to go to like the vocal file here, I could just double click, go into the editor. Sorry about that. And go to Very Audio, do an analysis, and then under functions, you could just extract MIDI. So those are two different ways, kind of for two different tasks. But this will work for monophonic audio, so it's not going to do chords or piano. So. All right, good to see. We have, I think it's Dudu Franca from Sao Paulo, Brazil. Thanks for joining the Hangout. Okay, reading through comments. People discussing the heat wave. All right, so just seeing some discussion on Melodyne as a newbie tool. So, so I see a question from Nick. Greg, I wanted to make a macro to select all muted audio regions. Is that possible? So let's give it a shot. So we'll say select media type is equal to audio. Property is set to event is muted. So let me just I'll keep that setting. I'll do a new project, and let me just create some muted regions. Okay, and so yeah, that looks like that does it. So just come to the project logical editor to select all muted regions. Under function, choose select. You want to say media type is equal to audio. You could also add MIDI parts as well if you wanted to. And then under properties, choose property is set to, event is muted. And then you could just simply select all those, just hit delete if you wanted to. So just do that. And that should do the trick for you, Nick. All right, so a question from Terry. In the logical editor, I'd like to be able to let Cubase present a pop-up for parameter 1 and or parameter 2. So it'll ask me what value to use when I trigger the logical editor preset within a macro that I trigger with a key command. I understand. So you say, I want to, delete notes between this range and have it pop up and set note ranges for you. So I understand kind of the request. It might be tricky within a macro to stop it and enter values in. So, but I'll mention that and pass it along. So thanks for the suggestion. Okay. Hi again. Can you change automation data colors, the lines? I like it whitish background. These are hard to see, so it's good. Take a look. And so let's go ahead and let me just change my Okay, so can you change the automation data colors? I think that these will be the lines. I like a whitish background, but these are hard to see. Let's take a look, see if it's maybe under preferences. So we could do a lot of ruler background, cycle grid. And let me just Yeah, I don't think it's able to be changed, but I'll keep looking, see if I kind of find out. Okay, let's move on to some more questions. Thanks for all the great questions. Okay, we're doing okay on time. All right, so seeing some discussion of running Melodyne. So yeah, so if you need to, run Melodyne, you could, if you have Melodyne Studio, you could run, runs as a plugin. So you should be able to see it here. But you could also just go to audio to extensions, and Cubase has support for ARA2, and then you should be able to just see Melodyne there. Then it'll show up in the lower zone window. And if you're not seeing the Melodyne plugin, what you should be able to do is go into, you could look in your VST plugin manager here and make sure that Melodyne is showing up under VST effects. And if you're running a VST2 version for some reason, make sure that you click on the little settings cogwheel here and make sure that the VST2 version is the path for where the plugin is installed is within the folder there. So there's just some things to do if you don't see it. See, nice comment from Ace. Greg, thank you so much for all your help and expertise. I've learned so much from you. I really appreciate it. I'm glad to help. Glad it's been useful. I think I just tabulated like the hangouts that we've done since the pandemic. I think before this hangout, we're at 131 hours and 3,588 questions. So hopefully it's not all wasted. So. Okay, so let's see. Question from Ted: is a 12-core 2013 Trashcan Mac Pro with 64 gigabyte RAM beefy enough for 10.5? Also, can you quantify percentage-wise how much more draw on CPU 10.5 is over 10? I didn't notice personally on the 5 or 6 systems that I regularly run Cubase on. I didn't really notice a big change from 10 to 10.5, but be very cognizant of, some people load up, one instance of Halion in Contact with 64 instruments and all of a sudden they're like, oh, my CPU usage is terrible. And it's because you may have to kind of split out amongst the cores to do that. So, but and sometimes, when you run plugins, plugins don't, do multi-core processing as well. So there's a lot of different variables in there. So. And seeing in our comment from Terry, it could also vary based on your audio interface that you're using. So. Hi, Greg. Jay from New Haven, Connecticut. I saw a video where you discussed VST MIDI expressions. Is it possible to use expressions from something like Iconica on another library, like Hollywood Orchestra? You could use the VST expression maps for any library, and most of them are, freely available. So if you just go to your expression map setup, you can load and save. So often once someone, it's kind of a great community thing when someone does an expression map and they spend a lot of time on it, it's generally freely shared. So you could definitely use expression maps on any sample library. It's not limited to Iconica or Hallian based instruments. So. Okay, so this is just reading through different comments and questions. Okay, so question: when I zoom in too much, the automation bar disappears, and I'm unable to edit or add automation. Is this intended or a bug? So let's go ahead. Let's say we want to zoom in. So that's at sample level. So, doesn't seem to be any issues kind of zooming in. So let's say I have all this automation. I'll just kind of. So as we just kind of zoom right in, so it seems like that's working as expected down to the sample level. But if I'm misunderstanding, just let me know. Okay, so I see question from Linda. Love Cubase, but having trouble auditioning MIDI clips in MIDI window. How do you hear them? So let's say if I just jump over here, we'll go to our loops. I think I have a bunch of MIDI loops in here. So sometimes when you audition a MIDI loop, it may have to actually load up the instrument. So it may take a couple of seconds. So it's not as instantaneous as an audio loop. But if you come here, so as we do that, then it'll start to play. So that's really kind of all you have to do. So you may just have to be a little patient. It's not as instantaneous as maybe some, as we expect from audio nowadays. Okay. Is there a transient to tab-like feature? So let's just get a drum loop. Or I'll just do another file here. It's a little easier. All right, so let's say I'm here, and I think it's just, not that. Let me just, I think it's Alt-N and B. So at this point, you could just, let's say, find our, we could, so as Cubase will do it, so you can, I'll select like this file here, and then Alt-N, and Alt or Option N to go to the next transient, and B to go back. So next, and Alt Option N, Alt Option B. And so you could just kind of select the track here. So if I say, let's go to this drum track, Now that that's selected, we could just navigate just kind of that easily. And you could set, the threshold for that. So as we come here, so that's kind of like a tab to transient. You could think of it as an Alt N or Option N, Alt B, Option B to transient or to hit point. Okay, so I see Terry Dean is bragging he's number 65 and a like button. I think people need to top him, so feel free to hit the like button. Okay, reading through comments. All right, so we have a question from Nathan David. Is it possible to play stuff in Cubase while using Zoom? Like share the screen or sort? Yeah, it's basically what I'm doing here. People, I think there's a plugin Restream that some people use. Some people use Voice Meter. I take a different approach to routing the audio. So I'm just sharing my screen through OBS, but I take the audio out of my audio interface connected to my laptop that you're seeing, and I connect that into a mixer, and the microphone is going into the mixer as well. And then the mixer, that's what Zoom or OBS is transmitting through the mixer and not my audio interface. So, and you could use a separate, just, inexpensive audio interface. And that way, I have two kind of different audio streams. And I found that to be the most reliable and easy system. Okay. All right, so just reading through. Okay, so I see, looks like Tanmay got his Melodyne working. Got to work with the ARA2 extension, but don't know how to transfer MIDI from the extension to MIDI track. Have a guitar loop, but extract MIDI and use VST. So, but yeah, so I don't have Melodyne installed on my demo computer here. All right, just saying comment. Wavelab looks great. Okay, so I see question from Linda. Hi, Greg. One more question. You could ask more if you want. No problem. I have a lot of old Cakewalk Sonar files, contain both MIDI and audio, and I want to transfer to Cubase. Is there an easy or bulk way to do that? There really isn't. What I would do is, because the MIDI, there's different transfer protocols, and you could do MIDI as a standard MIDI file and audio as an AAF or OMF. So if you transfer like an AAF or OMF for the audio and transfer MIDI at the same MIDI file and MIDI files, you can get the data over and merge them, but there really isn't a way to do it. So if you've worked, all on MIDI or on audio, it's pretty straightforward with some industry standard kind of translation protocols. But if you have both, you have to kind of take it two steps and merge. But it's not hateful. And once you kind of do it once or twice, you kind of get the flow of how to do it. But we're glad to have you on Cubase. Welcome. Okay. Okay, just reading. So I don't have an iPad. I see a question on IC Pro. If you want to ask Jason, he just asked, Is there a way to see the ruler show bars and beats instead of seconds? I'm sure there's a way to just toggle it, but I don't have my iPad in front of me. But I'll try to have it for the hangout on Tuesday. If you want to send me a reminder, I could do it on Tuesday. So you feel free to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. Okay, question. Greg, I picked up some tips, some tricks today. Also, a bit of a question now. Is there a way to record Windows system sounds directly to an audio track, like the plings and background sounds? You know, what I see a lot of people do is they have their audio interface and they take the audio out of the built-in audio interface from their computer and just, run a cable between the two and just record the sounds. So there are some loopback tools. Sometimes they could be a little tricky to get configured consistently. So, but that's a very simple kind of old school, solution as well, as just, run a cable real quick. I'm seeing other people saying Sonar works system wide. I see Pablo Vasquez says Greg rocks. I guess that's almost as cool as being I'm the leche, which is, I think that's the translates in Spanish. Greg is es la leche. So that's what I learned last week from Pablo. All right, so let's go through. Thanks again for all wonderful questions. Yeah, and seeing a further comment from Linda, it's like, well, I did that, and then, but I have a lot of files. This is probably going from Sonar to Cubase. I was wondering if there's something easier than one at a time. So probably not. It would have to be probably done at the Sonar level, and a lot of companies don't want to spend a lot of time making it easier for you to not use their program. So, but you could ask them, see if there's something. Okay, so I see question. Hi, Greg. When you're editing a very audio and changing pitch, for some reason, audio is not playing back until I do a repeat of the solo button. So let's say if I wanted to come here and let's just take this bass part, there's one thing to kind of check. So I'll just do the analysis. So as you do this, there's this little kind of hidden icon, the acoustic feedback. So make sure that that is enabled. So without that, you could move kind of the pitches up and down without really hearing it. But if you have this acoustic feedback turned on, that should allow you to hear it. So make sure you have that acoustic feedback turned on. Okay. Okay, so I just see hi Greg, contact VST freezes when closing the instrument. It goes to a white screen and sometimes crashes Cubase. Contact 5 player works great. Any reason why this may be happening? I don't use contact a lot, but a lot of times it sounds like maybe it's, You know, depending on the libraries that you're using, that it could be using a lot of RAM, and maybe your computer is running out of memory. So that's something I would check to see. But maybe some other people could chime in if who work with Contact more. Okay, I think I just had a message come in. Let me just check it really quick. Bear with me just a second. Okay, so it says I'm trying to align rough scratch audio track to tempo, did tempo detection. Let me just blow this up a little bit. Set definition from tempo. Save definition in project only and tempo to constant value. Some points are a little off, so I try to manually adjust them in definition, manual adjust. Some markers are stretch grid, and when I move it, it messes up the entire event instead of just moving the markers like in the set beat position markers. How can I make that so all markers are set beat position and none are stretch grid? So what I would do if you have a tempo detection and you're finding that it's off, I would try to fix it like right, during the tempo detection process. So let me just jump back. So what I would do personally is I come here, I would do my tempo detection. Or I'll just do it from my project, from another project here. Okay, sorry, I'm operating 3 computers here at once. Sorry. Okay, so, there's a reason, when you see this, and like, let's say if I listen to, for those who haven't seen this function, and we put on our click track, that knows that this is off. So before you leave the tempo detection, if you're finding some stuff is off, come here to the project tempo. So let's say we go to the project menu and we do our tempo detection. All right, now as we do this, we notice that it actually switches you to, to the time warp tool. So I will go ahead and close this. And, what I would do is every time just make sure that we kind of go through here, listen to it, just do a spot correction. So I should have set the offbeat, and then I would just go through here, and if it needs to be tweaked, before applying the metadata to the file, I would just come in here and tweak these to the downbeat and then apply. That would be the approach that I would do. So then it's much easier to kind of work with. Okay, sorry, my timeline may have jumped. All right, I'm just going to scroll back. Sorry about this. Okay, just navigating back to where I was. Sorry. Okay, so, all right. Okay, just finding my spot where I was. Okay. Okay, so hi Greg, I'm trying to see if there's a way to prevent the input-output folder from being auto-populated in the project window every time you start a project or open an existing project. So I think it's, when you do that, and I think we covered this in the last Hangout as well, that it's going to be saved within the project itself. So, but, I just want to make sure. So let's say if I have a number, I'll do a new project. And let me activate, go to my audio connections. And let's say if I have, all these inputs here. So I'll just kind of come right over here and let's add 16 audio tracks. And then when we go to the mix console, so if I don't want to see that, I'll just come here and let's just filter that. Then as soon as I save the project, those settings will stick. And if I save it in a template, those settings from the template will stick as well. So, try to make sure that you save the inputs with the state that you wanted in. And I think it will, that you should be okay. And it seemed to, and we did it on the last Hangout as well. Okay, just reading through more questions. Okay, so I just see a feature request. Could you ask developers to set up a VST server option so we can store and load VSTs and other plugins from another system on the LAN so that the system can relieve recording processing? So, there is functionality that's been in a program maybe about 20 years called VST System Link, which a lot of people use. So if you come over here to your studio setup, and this would require like an audio interface that both have like a SPDIF or like an ADAT optical digital connection between the two. And once you have VST System Link set up, you could have like another version of Cubase, and it could be like a Cubase LE AI or Elements. And, through the digital audio cable, like a SPDIF cable, have all the information stored, hosted plugins and instruments hosted on that machine or video, and just simply work with that. So if you have two different machines, kind of the original intention was like, the paradigm of my computer's out of power, and like, if you ran out of, if you had two 24-inch tape track machines, and, if you had a 24-track tape machine, you would just get another one if you needed 48 tracks. So you would get another computer, hook up a SPDIF cable, and you could host instruments there. So it's, there's a lot of solutions such as, using VE Pro that are very popular, but, we do have VST System Link. So if you have like a digital audio connection between two different computers, use that. It works great. So. Okay. Okay, so what is the best question? What is the best way to set up an external keyboard sound module? I migrated to Cubase 2 days ago. Would I create MIDI tracks and one audio input track and keep them all in one folder? You could definitely do that. So it depends. It could really depend on if you have your external MIDI. Like in my studio, I still have, not that I really use them anymore, but I have 23 tone modules or synthesizers in kind of my rack. It's a really tall rack. And as I work with that, I don't have, that number of inputs on my audio interface. So I send those into a mixer. If you just have like one keyboard, you could take, what I would do is go to your audio connections and create, if you're in Cubase Pro, come over here to an external instrument and you say, okay, this is my Korg M1 or my Yamaha Montage. It's connected into these connection ports, so these inputs of my audio interface. So at that point, I could just say, I want to add a track. I could add an instrument track, and we would see under external, I would just say montage and come right over there. And now the audio out from the montage is connected to the defined input on my audio interface, and I could treat it, just like a VST. And that would allow you to take the audio out of the montage, be able to EQ it and run it through your VST plugins inside of Cubase that are the same as your audio. So, and welcome to Cubase, Anthony Hutchings. We're glad to have you on the Hangout and glad that you're here. Okay, so we have more requests for the tab to transient feature that we showed. So again, Alt-N, Alter Option plus N, Alter Option plus B on the selected channel. Okay, see question, Greg, how do I completely delete Cubase projects? It's really wherever you save the Cubase project to on your system. So if I come here, I keep them in documents, and then I have a projects folder, and then like when I start my session in Cubase, I put each folder. I will put each project into its own unique folder. So then when I need to archive or delete, I would just come directly over to my Finder and just take that file folder, which has all those files for that, and just, move it to trash or move it to recycle bin. Okay. Okay, we're just reading. So it says, hi, Greg. Hope all is well. Timeline jumped on you. Sorry about that. I know we lose a couple questions. Posting again, how do you go back to a virtual instrument track such as a violin you played in and replay the track and record expression automation? So oddly enough, I don't think, and I haven't tried this in a while, but I don't think that the expression map information can be overdubbed. So you may want to either just, try to play some stuff in and edit it, or just manually enter it in with the mouse. Okay. And we had a question about, people wanting more templates. And Jazz Dude mentions that there are huge orchestral templates for Cubase at Dick Alert's channel on YouTube. They're about $30 to $40. Okay. And he has everything routed in groups and effects groups. We see it seems like a good chunk of the world is having a heat wave. Where I am, it just kind of broke a little bit yesterday, and now we just have bad rain all weekend. So. So question, where can I find more Alan Morgan channel presets? I think that the all the presets that Alan has created are inside of Cubase. So I'm not sure if there are any more. You could try to reach out to him maybe on social media to see if he has anything. But generally with every release, I think Alan is always, does a wonderful job of preparing content for us. So all right, so just seeing please increase my volume level. So let me just check, see how it's looking in OBS. All right, so I'll give it a little more juice. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's just, thanks for all the great questions again. All right, so question, is it possible to use expressions from something like Steinberg Iconica on outside VSTs, like East West Hollywood Orchestra? So the expression maps work with any, let me just jump back to Cubase, sorry about that. The expression maps work with any instrument, so you may have to make the maps, but within Hallian-based instruments can automatically generate expression maps for you based on the content and the samples. So, but the expression maps are intended to work with every library that's available in the system. All right, so I just see a comment from Paulie D. Cubase University twice a week for free. Crazy. Yeah. Sorry. There's probably someone mad at me that I'm killing the Cubase tutorial paid market. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so lots of great discussions. So just continue to read. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that. Okay. All right, so sub 403, great to see you on a Hangout. You don't have to apologize if you're late. You can always watch it later. You can watch it multiple times. So. So question, you showed how to show how chord pads can show your chord input, but is there a way that you can see the chords in real time as you record? I think, I'm not sure if it shows it in real time. Let me just do a quick. I'll just add a chord track quickly, but I think it may be able to show you on display. So let me just. Okay, I'm just going to. So I may not show you in real time, but I think that if we look. That there is, I'm just trying to remember, there's like a little info line here that could. show you different. Sorry, let me just. So if you look here, you can see kind of the chord indicated to the current chord display. So it may not show it in real time, but for a recorded part, you could just kind of see the current chord display listed there. So, but I don't think it shows the chord in real time other than with a chord pad or chord track. There may be some way of doing it, but okay, let's just so it says, sorry, newbie, when using contact and a library selected, say, like swing more, can I have more than one instrument with just one version of contact running so as to record a full composition, please? Yeah, I mean, you could run multiple, obviously you could run multiple sounds and multiple instances, multiple sounds within an instance of contact and multiple instances of contact or other instruments. All right, so just see, love to see how to set up channels and contact. So I don't have contact on my system. Sorry, but I'm sure it's not that hard. So I see a question, Greg. Can you recommend some affordable studio headphones that would show my mixes sound in real life? Does Yamaha make any? So the headphones I use in my studio a lot now, and what I'm using on a Hangout, I think are the HPH M8. Let me just. I don't think there's. Let me see if I can find a model number. So it's what I'm using is the HPH MT8, and I found them to work really well and very comfortable to wear. I could wear them for kind of a whole 4-hour hangout and without any bother. So, and we kind of did a Cubase party and gave them kind of as like a little goodie bag gift, and it was a lot of users were contacted us telling that they bought a lot of units of the headphones, that they liked them a lot. So that's one to check out. But headphones could be, very personal. Okay, so I just see, about how to extract MIDI using Melodyne Studio 5. So I don't have Melodyne in my system, but maybe you could check out some resources at Ceremony. Okay, Gareth is signing off. He's having electronics components problems. So many thanks for being a mine of information as always, Greg. Thank you, Gareth. All right, we hope you have a great weekend. Stay safe and healthy. Okay, reading through. I think Ambient Dave is signing off. All right, we have a couple more. Let's keep going through some questions. I see a comment, Greg should get a raise. You could always, write people at Yamaha and Steinberg and let them know. So I'll gladly accept. So, but thank you for the kind words. Okay, so I see kind of different, some of how did the Cubase project. So we showed that. So. Okay, and I see just a comment, thanks, Greg, but I don't hear anything when I click on the MIDI loop. So, make sure that when you're doing the MIDI loop, you may also have to, as you do this, it could be that as you're auditioning, if you have Cubase Pro, make sure that you have the control room active. And you could do this in the audio connections and just kind of go to control room. You want to probably have your outputs here set to not connected. And let's have your control room set up here to like your monitor and see if that makes a difference. Because it may have to be routed through the control room, Linda. Okay, we have a question. What's the difference between exporting audio in real time versus offline? So when we do this, you have the choice to do a real time export. Some older systems and older DAWs would have to run the audio through DSP in real time, and they would, when you had like an hour-long project, it would take an hour to export because it was physically running through the DSP. When we have to do real-time export is if you incorporate external audio processes or external audio instruments that are defined in your VST, in your audio connections. So if we were sending audio out to a compressor and having sound MIDI information being sent to a Yamaha montage, and we have the audio outputs coming back, sending to, and the audio out from those devices, returning to the computer through your audio interface, we wanted to incorporate that in the audio export, we would have to do that in real time. But most of the time, there's no difference in audio quality. It's just if you're using external processing, that's when you do export. There used to be, like big conspiracy theories that, real-time exports sounded better than, quicker than real-time exports. The same exact data. It's just writing and, generating data with the same exact conditions. So there's no audible difference. So that's why we sometimes have the choices. So if you're incorporating external analog processing that has to actually, where the signal is actually going out, being affected in hardware, the data is going out and coming back in, we have to do that in real time. I see other people mentioning for Linda the control room. They're probably just about 40 minutes ahead of me. And also, Linda, make sure that, you're trying, check, some of the different MIDI loops and, try, if you have MIDI files probably won't sound, but MIDI loops, and there's a distinction between MIDI loops, which are associated with a particular instrument versus a MIDI file, which isn't associated with a particular instrument. So if you're trying to audition MIDI files, you won't be able to do that, but you want to make sure that you have, you want to make sure that it's an actual MIDI loop. And those are two different things. Okay, so we have a question. How do you split out amongst the cores when running many different VST instruments? So as we just got to close this window. So as you have different instruments that are lined up here, one instrument can only take one CPU core. And that's just kind of how the computer is working. So as you add more VST instruments, those will be spread across your different cores. So just kind of running more instances of the, in the instruments, that will kind of split out the processing cores for you. Okay, so I see Agent K is wondering who will be the 100th like. So we'll have to find out. So we see a question. Hi, Greg. Is there any work to make very audio polyphonic like Melodyne? Thanks. Currently, it's set and designed to work with monophonic sources, but, it's obviously a popular feature request. So, we'll have to see if that will come in the future. But currently, it's set for just monophonic devices. Okay, so Greg, I'm trying the MIDI loops from, well, question, Greg, I'm trying the MIDI loops from the chord patterns, but unfortunately the phrase changes from the original, but I have some setting wrong. Where can I search in Cubase options? So make sure that, when you're doing it, if you're putting it on different chord pads, it's going to change. If you want to send me a project at clubcubase at steinberg.de, but the phrasing will change based on the pads and the voicings of the chord pads that you have assigned to it. So while it may sound one way in a project window, once you do it, and depending upon your voice chord, your voicings setting for the chord pad, that can have an effect as well. Question. Hi, I need a new computer for Cubase. Is Ryzen working fine? So lots of people are running the Ryzen processors. I think Jazz Dude has a Ryzen processor, and he seems to, it works very well for him. So I think, the AMD is kind of, back in the game. So lots of people are having great success with their AMD processors. Okay. So just see a comment. Hi, Greg, my everyday hero. Do you know if there's any plans for mixers like the PreSonus niche products? Yamaha has, a whole range of digital mixers that integrate really well. So I'm not sure what the niche products are exactly, but, I'm not sure if they're kind of small form factor or larger mixers. But there's kind of a whole range of, mixers from Yamaha and other companies that work really well with Cubase. Okay. Okay, so Pablo's back. He's probably been back for a long time. Okay, so Agent K's telling people you could submit questions in advance. Okay, so question. Hi, Greg. What is the difference between 32-bit float and 64 in processing precision? So we could set this in the project setup. So you could hit Shift, or I'm sorry, it's not there. Having a brain cramp. So if we go to your studio setup and we can set your VST audio system. So we could have 32-bit and 64-bit. And one of the reasons that this was really kind of done is because with Cubase 10, we released audio interfaces, like the Steinberg AXR, as well as our URC interfaces have 32-bit integer converters. So if we're capturing an actual 32-bit word for the audio file, because the industry in the world's been stuck on 24-bit for way too long, that when we work with that and we start wanting to have more processing precision, so we take that 32-bit and then we add all of our DSP processing, your real-time effects and EQs, you need to have a higher resolution than what the source file is at. So with that, we doubled the precision of the audio engine so that it could be more precise, and it could be very subtle, but some things it's very apparent on. So if you're doing like a bunch of 808 kick samples and maybe a hip-hop track, you may not notice. If you're doing like a heavy metal thing, you may not notice. But I took a project, and one of my a good friend of mine, Greg Lukens, who's based in Washington, D.C. area, who has probably the best ears of anyone I've ever met in my life, freakishly amazing ears. And he's an audio consultant and mastering engineer, and he's blind. He lost his vision when he was about 14 or 15. And I took the same project and actually exported it as a 32-bit float and exported it as a 64-bit float, just the same files. And I sent him both files, and I was like, and this is my blind listening test. And I just said, Greg, which one is better? And immediately I sent him like a download link. He said, this one's better. I'm not sure why, but it's a little, and he has Meyer HD10 speakers. So I think it's $170,000 of speakers in his, mastering room. So it's like a very critical listening thing. So I just sent him the two files to say, which one sounds better? Is there any difference really? And, and to him, it was just like, very apparent, obvious that the 64-bit floating had a better sound image. He couldn't exactly express why, but he picked that one was better. So it will, have a very subtle improvement. You may not notice it if you have a pair of Yamaha HS5 monitors in your room, but if you have Meyer, $170,000 worth of Meyer speakers in your, master bedroom, mastering room, you can hear it. So it just gives you kind of a more precise, more precision as you do reverb tails, as you do fade ins and fade outs, so that you can have those subtleties preserved. Okay. Okay, we had a couple questions that were sent in. Let me do that before we run out of time. Thanks again for all the wonderful questions. So we had a question about the Project Logical Editor, about the ability to move a track, to the very top or to the very bottom using the Project Logical Editor. And I found a couple of tricks that people were doing where I couldn't find a way to do this easily. It's pretty easy enough just to kind of take a track and move it up like so. But as we want to do this, what I see some people have done is they'll just kind of select like the top track and go to the visibility settings here and choose to, so if you have 400 tracks, you can say show tracks or show selected tracks, and then just kind of flip that and then do a show all tracks again. So I've seen some people do that as kind of a workaround, but I haven't found a way. I'll keep kind of playing around with it to see if I could come up with something. Okay. We had a question of someone wanting to, let's see, come over here, and if they had a track where they wanted to do a tempo count in. So let's say we have a tempo change of this and you want to do recording. So they wanted to start at measure 3, but when they come here, if they have like a 2-bar count in, let me just revert this. So we obviously have something weird going on. And what they had run into was, as they work with this, that so if you wanted to give a count in track for someone, so let's say we start right at measure 2. Let me just okay, so this should make more sense. Sorry. So that when they want to do like a pre-roll, so let's say in the system setup here, where you can say, okay, I want it in the transport. Sorry, wrong window. So let's get to your metronome setup. That they set up like 2 measures of count in. That it was recording at the previous tempo. So it would do it kind of at this tempo as opposed to this tempo. So what I've seen some people do, if you need to do, like, give the count in at the tempo of where the person is punching in, and there's a tempo directly before that, is just hold down Control or Command Shift and do that for 2 bars, and just kind of temporarily go to the range tool. And when you get to the range tool, just insert silence, and that will give you, that should automatically just move the 2. Let me just do that again. So we'll have our 2 measures like that, and go to edit, and then temporarily what you could do is just choose to do an insert silence, and then you'll have 2 measures for a count in. Okay, and then we also had a question about kind of being able to edit a stereo file, like the left and right channels, independently. And we could do this like if there's a dropout on one channel and you wanted to replace it. So in this case, we want to select the particular track, not the event, but select the track. Go to your project menu and choose to convert tracks. And we'll say a multi-channel to mono. And at this point, it'll just now split it into your 2 channels. And then if you had, let's say, a dropout here, you could just edit the left and right channels independently. Okay, let's jump back to our feed. We have a couple more minutes and then we'll be wrapping up. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. Okay, so hi Greg, can you go over what Media Prepare Archive does and how would one use that? So, if you wanted to take if you needed to hand off, let's say when we do this, we'll see the Prepare Archive function. So when we go into the pool window, we may have audio files that are being used in the project. And these files could be coming from any folder on your computer. It could be a loop library, audios that you recorded from another project. And what the prepare archive function will allow you to do is to, one, make sure that, they're all common sample rate, that they're all going to be in the same folder. So you could have the project folder will contain all of the media in that particular project. So if you have files that are kind of scattered, throughout, it's like, oh, I downloaded the sound effect to my desktop. I want to drop that in, but the file resides on the desktop and not the project folder. And I grab a file from another project folder. When I want to back up and prepare the archive of all the files needed for that particular file, to have that project play back, that's what the prepare archive function does. Okay, my timeline just jumped. Sorry about that. Let me just see if I can scroll back. Thanks for all the great questions. All right, so just see a nice comment from Calm Music. Thank you, Greg, so much for all the hangouts you do. Every time I learn something new, which improves my workflow. I'm glad you're getting better. And thanks for the kind words. So I see, will VST host work over Ethernet network like VE Pro? So VST system link is really, it doesn't work over Ethernet. It's just going to really work. It's really just going to work over like a digital audio connection. And that way it kind of handles all the clocking as well. Okay, so I see Terry D, and I want to use VST system link between my Vista machine and Cubase for AI and my MacBook. Plus 10.5, I can't activate C4 AI because the older version, etc., doesn't sync to the server anymore. Okay. Question. Hi, Greg. Is there a way to change the color of the time warp markers or maybe change the opacity of the vertical lines? Thanks for all the great info and support. I think it's kind of fixed. I'll just take a look just to make sure. I haven't really looked for that. But it would, if it would be here, I think it would probably be. So I don't believe so, but I could take a look more, but I don't think so. See, nice comment from Linda. Retrospective record is a very cool feature. Yeah, it's. I know a lot of my composer friends joke. It's like I haven't hit record in years. It's all everything's retrospective record. So. Okay, so So as just see, real quick question, Greg, could you please explain once again how to get Groove Agent 4 kits and beat machines into the mixer console? Thank you. So if it's like a beat agent kit and you want it to maybe be split, so I'll just load this up real quick, and we're just about ready to run out of time. So let me just do this quickly. So if you want to spread out the, take the different tracks to different, let's see, this probably be a beat agent kit. So what you need to do is in earlier versions of, you may have to go directly to the VST instrument, the VSTi, and activate the outputs here. But in the newer versions, what you could do is as soon as you select a particular one, you could come over here. And let me just take a look at it. So we go to instrument. And then you could just say where it says kit mix, you could split out each pad to different outputs. So as you click here, you could have a different output for each pad that you wanted. So that's how you could do it. All right, we've gone 3 hours and 59 minutes. And if I don't wrap up, then I will lose the closed caption. So please, everyone stay safe, and we'll see you on Tuesday of next week for the Hangout. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care.